The Alpha Kings knew Luna had waited 6 years to wear her crown. But during the grand feast, one careless spill changed everything. A kitchen girl carrying a heavy tray accidentally spilled wine near the Luna's silver gown, and the next second, Syndra's hand struck her across the face before 400 wolves. The hall fell silent as the servant slowly lifted her eyes, revealing a face that made the Alpha King's wolf suddenly howl with recognition. But before Corvain could speak, his 6-year-old twins jumped from their seats, raced across the hall, and threw themselves around the trembling girl's waist. "Mama!" Bram cried through his tears. "Mama!" Ren repeated, clinging to her dress as if she had finally returned from the dead. The girl stared down at them, terrified and confused, while Corvain realized the woman before him might be the mate he had mourned for 6 years. The great hall of Hollow had not blazed so bright in years. Every torch was lit, every banner hung fresh, the grey wolf of the Greymore pack rippling against the stone. Long tables groaned under roasted meat and honeyed wine. Musicians played in the gallery above. 400 wolves filled the hall, all of them smiling, all of them waiting. Tonight the kingdom would meet its new Luna. King Corvain sat at the high table and felt nothing. He should have felt something. Pride. Perhaps. Relief. The pack had waited 6 long years for their king to take a mate, and tonight he would give them one. Lady Syndra sat at his right hand, radiant in silver, her dark hair braided with river pearls. Beautiful, poised, perfect. And still something in Corvain's chest sat cold and wrong. His wolf had been pacing since dawn. Not with hunger, not with want, with an ache older than either. A low, restless pull, as though a rope had been tied to his ribs, and someone somewhere in the hole kept giving it the smallest tug. He scanned the crowd and found nothing. Nobles, warriors, elders, servants moving between the tables with jugs and platters. Then a girl stepped out from the kitchen doors, and the rope pulled hard. She was no one. A kitchen girl in a plain gray dress, her sleeves rolled, a heavy tray balanced against her hip. Thin, tired, a faint bruise of sleeplessness under each eye. Her hair was the color of dark honey pinned back in a hurry. She kept her gaze down the way servants learned to and crossed the floor toward the high table without once looking up. Corvain could not look away from her. He did not know her face. He was certain of that, and yet his wolf rose to its feet inside him, ears forward, breath held, staring at this stranger as though it had been waiting its whole life for her to walk through a door. Recognition, not desire, not curiosity, something deeper and far more frightening. A knowing his mind could not explain. Corvain's hand tightened on the arm of his chair. At his feet, his children went still. He almost missed it. Bram and Ren had been squirming under the table all evening. Twin bundles of restlessness, 6 years old and bored past bearing by grown-up speeches. Corvain kept them close at every feast. He always had. A motherless king does not let his pups out of his sight, but now they had gone quiet. Utterly quiet. Both of them were staring at the kitchen girl. Bram had stopped chewing. Ren had risen half out of her seat, small fingers curled white around the table's edge, her whole body leaning toward the stranger as if pulled by the same invisible rope that had Corvain by the ribs. Neither child breathed. Corvain felt the hair lift along his arms. Beside him. Syndra saw the girl, too, and Syndra's beautiful face changed. Just for a heartbeat. A flicker. Gone almost before it came. Not annoyance. Not the cool distaste a Luna might spare a clumsy servant. Something else moved behind her eyes. Quick and pale and ugly. And if Corvain had not been a wolf, he would have missed it. It looked, for one impossible instant, like fear. Then Syndra smiled and lifted her cup, and the moment was gone. The girl reached the high table. She sat down the tray. Her hand trembled. Only slightly. Only once. And a thin ribbon of wine slipped over the lip of a goblet and ran across the white cloth toward the Luna's silver gown. The hall did not even have time to gasp. Syndra was on her feet, Clumsy little wretch. The slap cracked across the hall like a snapped branch. It caught the girl full across the cheek and turned her head. She staggered, caught herself on the table's edge, and the tray clattered to the stone. 400 wolves fell silent at once. The musician stopped. Somewhere a goblet rolled in a slow circle and went still. The girl did not cry out. She simply stood there, one hand rising to her burning cheek, and lifted her eyes for the first time all evening. She looked straight at Corvain, and a seam behind his ribs tore clean open. He did not know why. He did not know her. But looking into those eyes, gray-green, wet, furious, and unbearably tired, Corvain felt as though someone had reached into a locked room inside him and thrown the door wide, and he had no memory of ever building the room at all. His wolf howled loud, anguished, a sound with no cause. Corvain opened his mouth. He had no idea what he meant to say. He never got the chance because in the ringing silence after the slap, 2 small chairs scraped back, and before any nurse or guard could move, his children were running. They flew past the elders, past the guards, past their own father. They crossed the whole length of the high table's dais and threw themselves at the kitchen girl, and Ren was sobbing before she even reached her, and both of them wrapped their arms around the stranger's waist and held on as though the world were ending. And in the perfect frozen hush of the great hall, in 2 small voices cracked with tears, the twins cried out the one word that stopped Corvain's heart in his chest. Mama. Nobody moved. 400 wolves stood frozen in the great hall of Hollow, and not one of them made a sound. The banners hung still, the torches guttered, and at the center of it all stood a trembling kitchen girl with 2 royal children clinging to her waist, weeping into her apron as though they had found something long buried and lost. Mama. The word hung in the air like smoke. Corvain was on his feet. He did not remember standing. His first wild instinct was that he had misheard, that the whole hall had misheard. But he could see the twins' faces now buried against the girl's ribs, and there was no mistaking it. This was not confusion. This was not a game. Bram, who trusted no one, who flinched from every strange face at court, had his cheek pressed to the stranger's side with his eyes squeezed shut and his whole body shaking with relief. Ren was chanting the word over and over into the fabric. Mama, 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 the way a drowning child chants at the surface of the water. The girl stood rigid, arms half raised, not daring to touch them. She was terrified. Corvain could smell it rolling off her sharp and cold. But beneath the fear ran something stranger. Her hands hovered over the children's dark heads, shaking, and her face had gone white as bone, and she was staring down at them with the expression of a woman looking at a language she had spoken in a dream and could no longer read. She did not understand this either. That single fact struck Corvain harder than anything else. Whatever was happening here, the kitchen girl was as lost inside it as he was. Enough. Syndra's voice cut across the hall, high and tight. Guards, take the creature away from the children at once. 2 guards started forward. The twins screamed. It was not a tantrum. Corvain had heard his children cry 1,000 times, over scraped knees, over lost toys, over bad dreams in the black of night. This was nothing like that. Bram whirled to face the guards with his small teeth bared, and an actual snarl tearing out of his throat, a sound no 6-year-old should be able to make. Ren locked both fists into the girl's dress and shrieked as though the men were coming to kill her. Don't touch her. Bram's voice cracked down the middle. Don't you touch our mama. The guards stopped. They looked to their king. Hold, Corvain said. The word came out low, but it filled the hall. The guards froze where they stood. Corvain came down from the dais slowly. Every eye in Hollow followed him. He crossed the floor to where the girl stood pinned beneath his weeping children. And up close she was smaller than he thought, and younger. And the red print of Syndra's hand still blazed across her cheek. She flinched as he neared, but she did not run. She could not. The twins had her anchored. And so she only lifted her chin and met his eyes with a defiance that had no business surviving in a servant, and Corvain felt that locked door swing wide inside him again. "What is your name?" he asked. Her throat worked. "Violet, Your Majesty." Barely a whisper. "How long have you served in my kitchens?" 6 weeks. 6 weeks? Corvain's mind turned it over. 6 weeks in the lowest scullery. Unseen, unremarked, and his children, who had never once in their lives spoken that word. Not to a nurse, not to a governess, not to the woman he was about to make their Luna, had crossed a crowded hall to press it into her skin. He crouched. Bram and Ren did not release the girl, but they turned their tear-streaked faces toward him, and Corvain looked at his son and his daughter and asked very gently, "Little ones, why do you call her Mama?" Bram looked at him as though the question made no sense at all. "Because she is," he said simply. Ren nodded against the girl's hip. "She sings the moon song." She whispered. Nobody knows the moon song. Only Mama." Corvain went cold to the bones. He did not know what the moon song was, but his daughter had said, "Nobody knows it," with the certainty of a child stating that fire is hot. And somewhere in the ruined, locked room inside his chest, something ancient turned over in its sleep. A hand closed on his shoulder. "Corvain." His aunt's voice low and smooth. "This is a spectacle. Send the girl to the healers. Put the children to bed. And let us not feed the gossips a feast." He looked up. The Dowager Morwenna stood over him in her gray and silver, tall and unbothered, the most composed woman in the kingdom. She had raised him after his father died. He had never in his life seen her afraid. But when her gaze dropped to Violet's face, truly landed on it, cheekbone and jaw, and gray-green eyes, Morwenna went still, only for a heartbeat, only for the space of a single breath. She stopped. Then she recovered as she always recovered, and her mouth curved into the ghost of a smile. But Corvain had seen it. His wolf had seen it, and for the first time in his life. Watching his unshakable aunt look at a nameless kitchen girl, Corvain Greymore felt the cold, certain weight of a question settle into his gut. "What is it that the two of you already know?" They took Violet to the West Solar, and the twins would not be parted from her. Corvain allowed it. He told himself it was practical. The children were hysterical. The girl was the only thing that calmed them, and a screaming pair of royal pups was no way to end a feast. But the truth sat heavier and quieter than that, and he knew it. He allowed it because his wolf would not let her out of his sight. He posted Dane, his beta, at the door. He sent for the old healer, and then he followed his aunt and his intended Luna into the antechamber to have the conversation the great hall had not allowed. Sindra did not wait for the door to close. "She has bewitched them." Her voice shook. "Some kitchen witch. Some rogue's leaves, creeping into the palace to worm her way at the children. I want her gone. Corvain tonight before she does the little ones real harm." Corvain watched her carefully. Too carefully. He had known Sindra for 2 years. He knew her tempers, her pride, the cool cruelty she showed to servants when she thought no one was watching. He had seen her jealous. He had seen her furious. He knew the shape of both. This was neither. Sindra was pacing. Her hands would not stay still. She kept touching her throat, her braids, the pearls at her wrist, and her scent had gone sour with something that had no place in the mouth of a woman about to become queen. Fear, raw and bright and badly hidden. Not the fear of a rival, the fear of someone standing on ice and hearing it crack. "Why are you frightened?" Corvain asked quietly. Sindra stopped. "I am not frightened. I am concerned for your children." "You've never once been concerned for my children." He said it without heat, which made it worse. You could barely stand to touch them. "So tell me, Sindra," a ragged girl who cannot lift her eyes to a table, what is it about her that makes the future Luna of Greymore tremble? The color drained from her face. For a moment, she said nothing. Her eyes darted to the door to Morwenna, back to him, and Corvain saw her reach for a lie and failed to find one small enough. It was Morwenna who saved her. "You are tired, nephew." The dowager settled herself in a chair by the fire, unhurried and serene. "You have carried a great grief for 6 years, and tonight a poor mad girl has stirred it up in front of the whole court. Of course, the children latched on to her. They lost their mother in the cradle. They have been aching for one their whole lives. Any warm woman who shows them kindness will draw that ache to the surface." She spread her hands. "It is sad. It is nothing more." It was a good answer, reasonable kind even. Corvain almost believed it. Then his aunt added lightly, too lightly, "Send her south in the morning somewhere far. It will be a mercy to the children in the end. Better a clean cut than a wound they keep reopening." And there it was. Send her far. Tonight, if it can be managed. Tomorrow, at the latest. Both of them in their different voices saying the same single thing. Get their girl out of Hollow. Get her beyond its walls. Beyond its questions. Beyond the reach of 2 children who had crossed a crowded hall to name her. His aunt was not soothing him. She was steering him. The realization opened under Corvain like a trap door. "Leave me," he said. Morwenna rose. Sindra hesitated, then followed. At the threshold. His aunt paused and looked back at him, and for a moment the firelight caught her face, and Corvain thought he could not be sure, but he thought that she looked almost sorry. "Some doors are kind of left shut, Corvain," she said. Then she was gone. He stood alone in the antechamber a long while, listening to the fire, listening to the pull in his own chest that would not quiet. A phrase had lodged itself behind his eyes and begun softly to ache. He did not know where it came from. "The dark keeps nothing that is mine." Over and over in a voice he almost knew. He pressed his fingers to his temple, and the words slid away, leaving only the ache behind. At last he crossed to the solar and eased the door open, a hand's width, inside. The fire had burned low. Bram was already asleep, sprawled across the girl's lap with one fist knotted in her sleeve. Ren was fighting it, heavy-lidded, her cheek against Violet's shoulder. Losing, and Violet. Violet did not know he was watching. She sat very still so as not to wake them. Her slapped cheek had bloomed to a deep and ugly red. Tears stood in her eyes and did not fall. And as Corvain watched, she bent her head over his sleeping children, and under her breath, so low it was barely more than a breath at all, she began to sing, a slow, small tune, 3 notes falling, then rising, old as the hills, and sweet as grief. "Hush now, my 2 little moons." Corin's blood turned to ice in his veins. He did not know the song. He was certain he had never heard it in his life, and yet every hair on his body stood on end. And his wolf lunged up, snarling inside him, and the ache behind his eyes flared white-hot, because somehow, impossibly, he knew the next line before she sang it. "The night is long, but I am longer." Violet sang it. Corvain stepped back from the door, his heart slamming against his ribs. One thought roaring louder than all the rest. His children were right. Nobody knew that song. It had died 6 years ago in a birthing room with their mother. So, how did a kitchen girl who had lived in his walls for 6 weeks know how it ended? Elder Ossian was the oldest living wolf in Greymore, and in all Corvain's years, he had never seen the man's hands shake. They were shaking now. The healer had asked the twins to wait by the fire, and Bram and Ren had gone only because their mother told them to. And Corvain's chest had clenched at how easily that word came to them now. Their mother, as though it had never been anywhere else. Ossian drew Violet to the window light. He looked at her eyes, her teeth, the old badly set break in her left wrist. He asked her to turn her head, and he lifted the honey, dark hair away from the nape of her neck, and there he stopped. "Your Majesty," he said quietly. "Come and look." Corvain crossed the room. Behind her ear, half hidden at the hairline, sat a small silver pale mark. A crescent thin as a nail paring curved like a new moon on its back. Corvain knew that mark. He had kissed it 1,000 times without knowing why it moved him on the necks of his own children. One behind Bram's ear, one behind Ren in the exact same place. The pack healers called it the mother mark, a bloodline seal. It passed from a Sholf to the children of her body and to no one else in all the world. And it could not be bought or forged or faked. The twins carried Violet's mark because Violet had carried them. "It is not possible," Corvain heard himself say. "It is on her skin, my king." Ossian's voice was gentle and terrible. Skin does not lie. Violet had gone white. "I don't understand what's happening to me," she whispered. "Please, I only came here for work. I don't understand any of this." Ossian took her wrist again, and this time he pressed his thumb to the inside of it and closed his eyes, the way the old ones did when they were listening to the blood instead of the words. For a long moment he said nothing. Then his face changed. "Veil root," he murmured. "What?" said Corvain. "There is veil root in her blood. Old years old. Layer on layer of it." Ossian opened his eyes and they were wet. "It is a memory poison, Your Majesty. A cruel one. A single dose steals the night. Given again and again over weeks, it hollows a mind out like a gourd. It takes the years, the names, the faces, and leaves the body walking around the empty place where a life used to be." He looked at Violet with something close to grief. This woman did not lose her memory to illness or a blow. Someone fed it to her patiently on purpose. The room was very quiet. Corvain felt the floor shift under him. "Ossian," he said, "the children's mother died 6 years ago in the birthing room. You were her healer. You signed the record." And now the old man's hands truly shook. "No, my king," he said. "I did not." Corvain went still. "I attended her through the labor," Ossian said, and every word seemed to cost him. "The birth went hard, but it went well. 2 living pups, a living dam. And then your aunt's own woman came to the door and told me the dowager required me elsewhere. Urgently, I protested. I was overruled. I was walked out of that room by 2 of the Dodger's guards, and the door was shut behind me. And I never saw the Luna again." His voice dropped. "They told me she bled out an hour later. They told me the body had already been given to the fire by her own dying wish before I could return. I never examined her. No one did. I have carried that shame for 6 years, and told myself I was a coward and a fool." He looked up at his king. "I was not a fool," Ossian said. "There was no body, Your Majesty. Because your Luna did not die in that room. They carried her out of it alive. She would not let him near her." Corvain had faced down rogue packs and border wars and a poisoned cup at his own coronation, and none of it had prepared him for the way a slight kitchen girl braced herself against a wall when he stepped through the door the next morning. Violet put the width of the whole room between them before he had taken 3 steps. Her back found the stone, her chin came up, and she looked at him with such raw, bottomless loathing that his wolf whimpered inside him. "Send me away," she said. "Please, whatever this place wants from me, I don't have it. Let me take the road south, and I'll never speak a word of any of it. South, the same direction his aunt had wanted her gone." Corvain pushed the thought aside. "You're safe here," he said. "No one will touch you again. You have my don't." The word cracked out of her. "Don't give me your word." He stopped. Her chest was heaving. She looked as shocked by her own fury as he was. She pressed the back of her hand to her mouth, as if she could push the anger back in. And when she spoke again, her voice shook. "I don't know you," she said. "I know that I don't. I have never in my life stood in a room with a king, and yet," her eyes filled, "and yet I look at you and something in me wants to scream. Something in me is so angry I can hardly breathe, and I don't know why, and I have not slept, and your children keep calling me a name that isn't mine, and I am so frightened. I think I am losing my mind." Corvain stood very still, Everything in him strained toward her. He made himself hold his ground. "Tell me about the song," he said gently. Violet flinched. "What?" "The moon song. The one you sang to them last night. Where did you learn it?" And there it was. The thing that undid her. Her face crumpled. Not with anger now, but with a bewilderment so deep it looked like pain. "I don't know," she whispered. "I've always known it. The way you know your own name. The way you know how to breathe. I can't remember a time before it, and I can't remember a time I learned it. It's just there. It's always been there in the empty place." Her hand pressed flat to her own chest. "There's a hole in me where a life should be. I have years I can't account for. I have grief with no grave. I wake up crying for people I can't picture and a home I've never seen. And I have taught myself not to look too hard at the dark inside my own head, because every time I do..." She broke off, shaking. "Every time you do," Corvain said softly. "What?" Ba lifted her eyes to his, and something moved behind them. A shape surfacing from very deep and very far, breaking toward the light. "Every time I do," she said slowly. "I see rain and a moon over black trees, and a man's back walking away from me down a road." Her voice had gone strange and distant. "That's one, and then there's another somewhere else some other time. I'm holding something small and warm. Two somethings, and I'm calling out, and a door is opening that shouldn't. And the last thing, She stopped. The blood drained from her face. Her eyes came back into focus and fixed on Corvain. And for one endless moment, neither of them breathed because the fragment had risen all the way up and shown her its face. And its face was his. "Get out," she said. "Violet, get out." She was crying now, backing along the wall toward the children, toward the only thing in this nightmare that felt true. "I don't know what you are. I don't know what any of you did to me, but I know that road. I have walked to the end of that road every night for 6 years, and stood there waiting, and I never once knew why." Corvain reached for her. He couldn't help it. His hand came up. She recoiled as though he'd struck her, and out of the black hole where her life used to be, out of the fog and the veil root and 6 stolen years, a single sentence tore loose and fell from her mouth before she could stop it. "You let them take us." The words hit the floor between them like dropped glass. Violet stared at him. Horror spreading across her face. Horror at him, and then worse. Horror at herself. Because she had no idea where the words had come from, or what they meant, or why saying them had felt like tearing open a wound that had been trying to close for 6 long years. Corvain did not send her south. He moved Violet and the twins into the guarded east wing instead. 3 linked rooms, 1 door, and Dane sleeping across the threshold of it with a blade. He told the court the kitchen girl was under royal question in the matter of the children's outburst. It was thin. The court whispered anyway. He did not care because he had 6 days. 6 days until the mating ceremony. 6 days until before 400 wolves and the elders and the moon goddess herself. He was meant to take Sindra as his Luna and bind the pack to her line forever. The banners were already hung. The feast was already ordered. And every hour that Corvain spent in the east wing instead of at his aunt's council table was an hour the whole kingdom noticed. He spent them anyway. He told himself it was to guard the children. That was true. And it was also a coward's half of the truth. The whole of it was that he could not stay away from the twins, from the song, from the furious, grieving woman who flinched when he entered and yet had begun without seeming to know. She did it to angle her body between him and the door, as though she had decided that whatever else he was not going to get past her to her pups. The children gave him the pieces. A child will tell you anything if you sit on the floor and wait. It was Ren who showed him the drawings. She kept them under the loose board beneath her cot. A fat, grubby stack of them. And she brought them to him one afternoon with the solemnity of a priestess bearing relics. Corvain spread them across the rug. Wolves, stars, a crooked castle, and then over and over on sheet after sheet in the wax and charcoal of a 6-year-old. A woman, the same woman. Honey hair, a gray dress, 3 notes rising from her open mouth. drawn as little curling lines. "That's the dream lady," Ren said. "Me and Bram both dream her. We always did. Even when we were little." She traced the honey hair with one finger. "She sings us the moon song so the dark can't get us. We didn't know her face until the feast." She looked up at Corvain untroubled. "Certain." Then she came out of the kitchen, and it was her, so we knew. Corvain's throat had closed. His children had been drawing their mother's face for years, a face they had never seen, could not have seen, a face that lived only in a bond too stubborn to die. Bram gave him the other half, and Bram's half was worse. The boy had waited until Ren was asleep. Then he crept to where Corvain sat by the fire and stood there scowling, working himself up to it the way he did with everything. "The dream lady," Bram said. "We used to draw her more and talk about her more." He picked at the hem of his sleeve. "The Pearl Lady didn't like it." Corvain kept his voice even. "The Pearl Lady? You mean Lady Syndra?" Bram nodded once, tight. "When we drew the dream lady, she took the drawings. She said the dream lady was a bad dream, and we had to stop having her. She gave us the sleepy tea when we cried about her. And after the tea, her face always went fuzzy, his jaw set, mutinous. So I stopped telling, and I hid mine under the board. I kept one." He glared at the fire. "You're not supposed to take somebody's mama away and make them forget her." Corvain sat with that a long moment. Veilroot was bitter. He had learned that this week. They had been giving it to his children, too. A little at a time. Just enough to blur a face and dull a dream. Not enough to break a bond that had never truly been breakable at all. His hands were not quite steady when he asked the last question. "Bram," he said, "when you kept your drawing hidden, did the Pearl Lady ever come looking for it? Did she ever say why she was afraid of a dream?" And Bram, who missed nothing, who was overlooked by everyone because he was small and quiet and always in a corner, told his father the thing he had overheard 3 nights past. When Syndra and the Dowager had stood in the dark of the nursery corridor and believed no wolf was near enough to hear, he said it the way children say things they don't understand, flatly, word for word, watching Corvain's face to see if he'd said it right. The Pearl Lady said, "The scullery girl has the dead Luna's face, and if he ever truly looks, we lose all of it." Bram's small brow furrowed with the effort of exact memory, and the Grey Lady said, "Then she should have stayed dead in the south, the way she was meant to." "We will not make that mistake again." The fire popped. Somewhere down the wing, a guard shifted at his post. Corvain Greymore sat on the floor of the east wing with his sons stolen, drawing in his hand and understood in one cold flood 3 things at once. His mate had not died. She had been cast out south to die, and had failed to, and had somehow walked 6 years home with a hollowed-out mind and their children's song still on her lips. His aunt and his intended Luna knew exactly who she was, and "we will not make that mistake again" meant they had already decided to finish what the Veilroot had started, and this time they would not miss. Elder Ocean begged him not to do it. "Her mind is a cracked cup, Your Majesty." The Veilroot fractured it, and the years have barely knit the pieces. If you force the memory back too fast, you may shatter what little holds her together. The old healer gripped his sleeve. "A mind can drown in its own returning. I have seen it. Let it come slow, or it may not come at all." "She has 5 days, Corvain said. "And my aunt has already decided she won't see the 6th. There is no slow left to give her." He went into the east wing at dusk. Violet was singing when he reached the door. He stopped in the passage and listened. And it was the moon song again, low and sweet, the twins tucked to either side of her on the wide bed. "Hush now, my 2 little moons." Bram's eyes were already closing. Ren was watching her mother's mouth. "The night is long, but I am longer." The melody turned and dipped and climbed toward its ending and stopped. Violet's voice simply failed. It happened the way a hand fails to close over a wound too deep to touch. She hummed past the place where the last line should go, skipped it, circled back to the beginning as if it had never been there at all. "Mama." Ren's voice was small and stubborn with sleep. "You never do the end. There's no end. Little love." Violet smoothed the child's hair. It just goes round and round. There is an end. Ren's lip trembled. In the dream, there's an end. You always used to do the end. And then she screwed her face up, chasing something too far away for a 6-year-old to reach. And then the dark can't get us. But you stopped. Violet's hand had gone still in her daughter's hair. I don't know the end, she whispered. And there was a note of quiet terror in it. The terror of a person standing at the edge of the hole in themselves. I've tried every night for 6 years. I have tried to finish it. And every night my throat closes and I can't. The dark keeps nothing that is mine. The words came from the doorway from Corvain. He had not decided to say them. They rose out of him the way they had been rising all week. Out of the buried room. Out of the grief his aunt had packed in wool and locked away. And this time he did not press them down. He said the line she could not sing. He said it in the voice he had said it in 6 years ago, under a hunter's moon, with his hands spread over the swell of her belly and 2 heartbeats fluttering under his palm. The dark keeps nothing that is mine. Violet's head came up. For one heartbeat her face was utterly blank. Then it was not. It hit her like the sea hits a breaking dam. Her eyes went wide and fixed on nothing, and her whole body drew rigid, and a sound left her that Corvain would hear in his sleep for the rest of his life. Half gasp, half sob. The sound of a locked door blown off its hinges. She swayed. Her hand flew to her temple. Bram sat up, frightened. Ren grabbed her sleeve. Violet. Corvain crossed the room. Violet. Breathe. There was a moon. Her voice came from very far away. There was a moon over black trees. And you, your hand, you said. She was shaking now hard. 2 heartbeats. You said it to 2 heartbeats. You said the dark would never. She pressed both hands to her head as though it might come apart. Why do I know your hands? Why do I know your hands? Because they were yours, Corvain said. Because you are. Stop. She recoiled, wild-eyed, backing off the bed, gathering both children against her by instinct, even as she fled the truth. Tears streamed down her face. The fragments were tearing through her too fast, showing her edges and corners of a life without showing her the whole. And it was agony, a whole self trying to come back through a door that had been poisoned shut for 6 years. I can't. It hurts. It hurts. Make it stop. And then her eyes rolled white and her knees went, and Corvain caught her before she struck the floor. The children were screaming. Dane was in the doorway with his blade half drawn. Corvain held his unconscious mate against his chest and felt her heart racing under his hand far too fast, exactly as Ossian had warned. A cracked cup filling faster than it could hold. Get the healer, he said. Now. The past had finally begun to break through the poison. He only prayed it would not take her with it when it came all the way. She woke in the deep of the night, and Corvain was there. He had not left. He sat by the bed with the candle burned to a stub, and when her eyes opened, he leaned forward, afraid to touch her, afraid of the loathing that had lived in her face for days. But the loathing was gone. In its place was something worse. Confusion. A drowning man's confusion, reaching for the surface and not knowing which way was up. I know pieces, she rasped. I don't know how they fit. There's a garden, a woman with gray braids, a road that goes south forever. And you're in all of it. And I don't know if you're the one who saved me or the one who... Her voice cracked. I need to know which one you are. I can't bear not knowing. Corvain reached into his coat. He had gone that evening while she slept. To the North Tower. To the chest his aunt had sealed 6 years ago with her own hands. To spare you, nephew. A widower should not keep a dead wife's things where he can see them. He had broken the lock with his bare hands. Inside were folded gowns gone gray with dust, a comb, a dried sprig of winter jasmine, and wrapped in a scrap of blue cloth at the very bottom. The thing he had been looking for without knowing it. He drew it out now and pressed it into her palm. A pendant, small, worn, smooth, carved from pale wolf bone, 2 crescent moons set back to back so that together they made a single circle. He had carved it himself badly. The winter she carried the twins. He had been a king who could not carve, and he had ruined 3 before this one, and she had loved the crooked 4th more than any jewel in his treasury. Violet's fingers closed around it, and the dam did not break this time. This time it simply dissolved, and the whole sea came home. It came not as pain now, but as a flood of returning. 6 years pouring back into the hollow place all at once, filling it, drowning it, making her whole. She remembered not fragments, everything. She remembered a healer's foundling with no name and no house, raised on the border where the herb women lived, who had gone to the Greymoor market at 17 and collided in a crowd with a broad, scowling, beautiful stranger, and how both their wolves had risen up, howling the word mate before either of them had learned the other's name. She remembered him laughing, the king who never laughed, when she told him she would not be courted. She had turnips to sell. She remembered the moonlit clearing, the binding, the vow, his terrible carving pressed into her hand. "My 2 little moons," he'd said, palm over her belly. "The dark keeps nothing that is mine." She remembered the border summons that had called him away in her 9th month, his face at the gate, his promise to ride home the moment the pups came, the last she'd seen of him, his back straight in the saddle, the road unspooling south beneath him, not walking away from her, riding to danger so it would not come to her. She had blamed that straight back for 6 years, and it had never deserved it. Not for a single hour she remembered the birth, the 2 red squalling scraps laid on her chest, the mother mark rising silver behind each tiny ear, and she remembered the door opening when it should not have, the dowager's gray braids, the cup of something bitter pressed to her lips by hands she'd trusted. "Drink, child. It will help the bleeding." The room going soft and far, the sound of her own newborns crying somewhere she could no longer turn her head to see, hands lifting her, a cart, a long road south under a cold moon, and a voice above her calm as still water saying to someone she couldn't see, "It's done. If she wakes, she's no one. If she remembers, she's gone. Keep the cup filled. 6 years of cups, 6 years of fog, 6 years of a body walking to the end of a road every night to wait for a man whose name the poison would not let her keep." And she remembered how it ended, not with rescue, but with neglect. The man who kept her had died in the spring, drunk and choking, and there was no one left who cared enough to fill the cup. The doses stopped, slowly, cruelly, slowly. The fog began to thin, though it gave her back no names, no faces, nothing she could hold. It gave her only the ache, and the ache had a direction north. She had left the southern town with a bundle on her back, and no reason she could have spoken aloud, and walked and worked and walked again, drawn on a thread she couldn't see, until the thread ran out at the gates of a gray palace she had never laid eyes on, and a kitchen took in a quiet girl with tired eyes, who could not have said where she had come from, because she truly did not know. Violet made a sound. Corvain gathered her in, and this time she let him, and she wept against the chest of the man she had hated for a crime he had never committed. Wept for the years, for the babies grown to children she had missed, for the crooked little moons she had carved into her own skin as scars where her life had been cut out. "You didn't leave me," she said into his coat. "You didn't leave us. You never knew. I never knew." His voice broke on it. "They told me you died. They gave me our sons." His arms tightened around her. "Our children in a grave with no body in it. And they let me grieve you for 6 years while you sat in the dark 200 m away with our song still in your mouth. Violet." He drew back and took her face in his hands. "I would have burned the world down to the ground to find you. I didn't know there was a world left to burn." Down the bed. 2 small faces watched them wide awake, wondering. Violet turned. She looked at Bram and at Ren, and for the first time in 6 years, she looked at them and knew the weight of them on her chest the night they were born. knew the mark behind their ears because it was hers. "Come here," she whispered. "Come to Mama." I know the end of the song now, and she gathered her children in, and this time when she sang it, she did not stop. "Hush now, my two little moons, the night is long, but I'm longer. Close your eyes, and I will always find you, for the dark keeps nothing that is mine." The ceremony was still 5 days off, and Corvain let every one of them pass. He could have moved that first night. He did not. He kept Violet and the twins behind Dane's blade in the guarded east wing and let her returning memory settle back into her like water, finding its old level. And he used the days to build something his aunt could not talk her way out of. He sent his fastest riders south for the keeper's ledgers. He set Dane to watch the dowager's glass house in the dark and cut away a sample of what grew there. He took Elder Ossian's oath in writing, witnessed and sealed by 2 elders who owed the dowager nothing, and he made a decision that tasted like iron. He would let them walk all the way to the altar, believing they had won. He would let his aunt reach for the Luna's cloak and let Sindra smile out at 400 wolves. And then, before the whole pack, he would tear the lie down to its foundations. So he waited. It was the hardest thing he had ever done. On the morning of the ceremony, Corvin sent for his aunt at dawn. He did not rage. He did not send guards to drag her. He simply had a message carried to her chambers. The king requires the dowager in the north study. And then he sat behind his father's desk and waited. And on the desk before him, he laid out the morning's harvest. Elder Ossian's sworn testimony, the sealed chest broken open, a jar of veil root fresh cut that Dane had lifted from the dowager's private glass house before the Jew was off it. A ledger from the South Road with a line of coin paid 6 years gone against the keeping of one woman unnamed. Memory broke. No return. And a child's drawing of a honey-haired woman with 3 curling notes rising from her mouth. Morwenna arrived composed, as she always arrived. She saw the desk. She did not slow. "You broke my seal," she said, settling into the chair across from him, as though he were still a boy who needed managing. "That chest was closed for your own peace. Corvain. Dredging up a dead woman's gowns will only... She isn't dead." The room went still. Morwa's face did not change. That was the thing Corvain would remember. He laid down each piece of proof, one by one, sliding them across the desk. The testimony, the ledger, the veil root, the drawing. And with each one he watched his aunt, the woman who had raised him, who had taught him mercy and honor, and the straight back of a king. And her face did not change at all, only her hands. Her hands drew slowly together in her lap, and gripped each other white. "Tell me," Corvain said very quietly. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then Morwenna lifted her chin, and when she spoke, it was not with shame. It was with the calm, cold certainty of a woman who had done a hard thing and never once doubted it. "You were 19 when your father died and left you a crown and a border war," she said. "I held this pack together with my own 2 hands, while you learned to be a king, and then you went to a turnip market and let your wolf pick you a foundling, a no-name girl from a border ditch with no house, no dowry, no alliance, nothing to bring the throne but a pretty face and a fertile belly." Her lip curled. The elders would have swallowed it eventually. The neighboring packs would not. A Luna is a treaty Corvine. She is a border held or a border lost. Your father knew it. You were too besotted to, so you sold her. I removed her. Moana's voice sharpened. "I gave you your heirs. 2 strong pups with your blood and your mark. Everything the pack needed from her, and nothing it didn't. And I gave you a proper match. My sister's daughter, noble blood. 3 allied packs. A Luna the whole north would kneel to." She leaned forward. "I did not kill your children's mother. I was merciful. I sent her south to be no one, and I kept her mind quiet so she could never come back and tear this family apart. Everything I have done for Greymore, for you, and the veil root in my children's cups, for the first time." Something flickered. "A dream," she said. "A troublesome dream that kept surfacing. A few drops to help them forget a mother they never knew. It harmed nothing. Corvain rose. He did not shout. His aura rolled out of him slow and vast and cold, and the windows shivered in their leads. And then the candle flames bent flat, and every proud line of the Dowager Morwenna went rigid in her chair. "You looked at me every morning for 6 years," he said, "across this pack's own table. You watched me lay flowers on an empty grave. You watched my sons cry for a dream, and you gave them veil root to make the dream stop. And you called it mercy." He set his hands on the desk and leaned into the light. "You did not do it for me. And you did it because you could not bear that the future of Greymore would carry a border girl's blood instead of yours. You dressed your ambition as duty, and you have worn it so long you have forgotten it was ever a lie." Morwenna's composure cracked at last. "Corvain, there is one thing you told the truth about." He straightened. "Aluna is a border held. So watch Aunt while I hold mine." He turned to the door. "Bring Lady Sindra," he said to the guard. "The Dowager will wait here. She is not to leave this room." And Moana, for the first time in her life, was afraid because she had heard that particular calm in only one other voice once long ago. Her brothers, the old kings, the voice of a Greymore, who had stopped asking and started deciding. Sindra came smiling. She swept into the north study in the pearl gray she'd chosen for the last fitting of her Luna's gown, certain she'd been summoned for some final tenderness before the ceremony, and the smile lasted exactly as long as it took her to see 3 things. The broken chest, the Dowager sitting rigid and gray by the window, and the king's face. Then she knew. Corvain watched the knowledge arrive. He watched her understand in the space of a single breath that every card had turned face up. "Corvain," her voice was honey in panic. "Whatever she's told you," a flick of her eyes at Morwenna, ready in an instant to feed her own aunt to the wolves. "Whatever you think you found, I can explain. I was a girl. I did what I was told. I never wanted." "You took the drawings from my children," Corin said. "You gave them the tea to make them forget her when they cried. That was not your aunt's hand. That was yours." Her mouth open-closed. "I loved you," she cried. "Everything I did because I love. Do not." The 2 words dropped like stones. "Do not say that word in this room. You knew she was alive. You knew whose eyes those children had. You stood beside me at a grave you knew was empty. And you let me lay flowers on it, and you called it love." His voice never rose, and that was the terror of it. "Say it plainly for once in your life. What did you order?" And Sindra, cornered, unmasked with nothing left to lose, did the one thing that sealed her. She lifted her chin and she smiled, and the honey went out of her voice, and what was left underneath was pure ice. "You want it plainly," she said. "The scullery girl doesn't reach the ceremony. I gave the order 3 days ago." She saw his face change, and she laughed high and reckless. "You think finding out changes anything? It's already done. Corvain, there's a blade in your walls with her name on it, and it moves tonight, and there is nothing." Corvain was already gone. He did not wait to hear the end of it. He was through the door and into the corridor at a dead run, roaring for Dane, roaring for the East Wing, his heart a hammer against his ribs, one thought driving out every other. Tonight. The ceremony was tonight, and his mates and his children were at the far end of the palace, with a killer already loose inside its walls. The blade came at dusk, and it never reached her. The assassin was one of the Dowager's South Road men, quiet and patient, and he slipped the East Wing guard and crossed the sitting room to the bedchamber door with 6 years of practice in his hands. What he had not counted on was that the kitchen girl was a kitchen girl no longer. The veil root was out of her blood. Her wolf had come home with her memory, and a mother's wolf standing between a stranger and her pups is the oldest, deadliest thing under the moon. He came through the door low. Violet met him. By the time Corvain and Dane reached the wing, it was already over, and Violet was standing in the center of the room with the twins behind her and a fire iron in her fist and her chest heaving. Alive. Alive. and alive. Corvain crossed the room and pulled all three of them into his arms, and did not let go for a long time. Then he stood, and the set of his face had changed, and he said, "Dress them well. All three of them. We have a ceremony to attend." The great hall of Hollow blazed as bright that night as it had the night of the slap. 400 wolves filled it exactly as before. The banners, the torches, the elders in their moon-gay robes. Syndra's lunar gown waited on its stand. The whole kingdom had gathered to watch their king take his mate, and word had raced ahead of them all day. Something has happened, something is wrong, so that the whole hummed like a hive as Corvain walked the length of it and mounted the dais alone. The head elder lifted his staff. "Beneath the eye of the moon, we gather to bind. We gather," Corvain said, "to hear the truth. And then you may decide, all of you, whether there is a binding to be done at all." He told them everything. He told it plainly. The way Bram told things. The market, the mating, the vow, the border summons, the birth, the silenced children, the empty grave. 6 years of veil root and a woman cast south to be no one. He did not spare himself. He told them he had grieved a lie and married toward another one and never looked hard enough to see. And as he spoke, the hum in the hall rose to a roar, and heads turned, and near the front a proud woman in pearl gray went slowly, terribly white. "Bring her," said Corvain. The doors opened. Violet walked the length of the great hall in a gown the color of a hunter's moon, a child's hand in each of hers, and 400 wolves fell silent to watch her come. She did not keep her eyes down this time. She looked at every face, and when she reached the dais, the elders drew back because they had all felt it now. The thing the twins had felt at the feast. The thing Corvain's wolf had known before his mind would. The truth rolling off her like heat off a stone. Old Ossian stepped forward and lifted the honey hair from behind her ear and showed the hole the silver crescent. Then he showed them the same mark behind Bram's ear and behind Ren. The mother mark. The seal that cannot be forged. The whole made a sound like a held breath let go all at once. "This is your Luna," Corvain said. "She has been your Luna for 6 years. Some of you served her. All of you mourned her. She was stolen from this pack by the 2 people I trusted most in the world, and she walked home through the dark with your future king's sons, carried in her heart, when the rest of her had been emptied out." He turned then at last to Syndra. She was already backing toward the wall. There was nowhere to go. Syndra of House Varl. His voice filled the hall to its rafters, and the alpha weight behind it drove the whole assembly to stillness. "You knew you silenced my children. You ordered my mate's death within these very walls not 1 hour ago, and it failed only because a mother is harder to kill than you understood." He drew breath. "There is no bond between us to sever, because you never let one form. So I do not break a bond. I strip a lie. Before this pack and beneath this moon, I name you false. I name you Kinslayer's hand, and I cast you out. You are no one's Luna. You never were. Go before I let her finish what you started." Syndra's legs gave. She sank to the stone in her pearl gray, and no one moved to help her. And the silence that met her weeping was the coldest sound in the world. And the Dowager Morwenna brought in under guard to hear it upright, to the last mane she did not exile, though the hall howled for it, though every part of him wanted to. She was his father's blood, and his own, and some wounds a man does not choose to carry into the rest of his life. "You will keep your life and your name," he told her, "and it cost him, and everyone could see that it cost him. And you will lose everything else. You will hold no title, no voice, no place at this table. You will live out your years in the north, holding where you sent her, and you will look south down that road every day, and you will remember who walked home up it." His voice dropped. "For her alone. You called it mercy once. This is what mercy actually costs. Aunt, learn it slowly." Then he turned his back on both of them, and held out his hand to the honey-haired woman in the moonlit gown, and 400 wolves rose to their feet and roared for their true Luna until the torches guttered in the wind of it. The road out of Greymore ran south past the palace walls and did not stop until it reached the border. Violet knew every stone of it. For 6 years, in a fog she couldn't name, she had walked to the end of a different road in a different town and stood there at dusk, waiting for something she couldn't remember to want. Now she walked this one in daylight, with her memory hole and her hand in her mates and at the place where the palace gardens gave way to open country. She stopped here, she said. This is where I watched you right away. I've stood at the end of 100 roads waiting for you to come back up this one. She looked at him. You never did, I know. Corvain did not reach for excuses. There were none, and she would not have wanted them. I can't give you the 6 years. I've tried to think of a single thing that makes it right, and there isn't one. There's only what's left. He turned to face her fully. I would like to spend what's left earning back one day of the 6 and then another. For as long as you let me. Ba was quiet a while. The wind moved the grass. I hated you, she said. For years. I hated a straight back on a horse. It turns out I was hating the wrong thing the whole time, and the person who deserved it was pouring tea for my children and calling it kindness. She let out a slow breath. I don't know how to hand you 6 years of trust like it never left Corvain. I don't think anyone could, but I know your hands. My wolf never once stopped knowing your hands, even when the rest of me was empty. Her voice thickened. So we start there at the hands and we go slowly. We go slowly, he agreed. A shriek of laughter split the quiet. Down the slope, Bram and Ren were running through the long grass, with Dane lumbering after them, pretending badly to be a bear. Bram tripped and rolled and came up shouting. Ren flung herself at the beta's knees. They were loud and filthy and gloriously ordinary. 2 children who had spent 6 years dreaming a face and now got to wear that face out every single morning. And the sound of them undid something in Violet's chest that the veil root had knotted shut a long time ago. I missed their first words, she said, watching them. It was not quite grief. It was not quite anything with a name. Their first steps. The first time they laughed. I'll never get those. No, Corvain said. But there's a second word and a 100th. There's this morning. There's the next one. He watched his son tackle his beta into the grass. Ren asked me last night if you were really going to stay. I told her yes. I need it to be true. Violet. Before I say it to her again. Violet watched her daughter shriek with joy in the sunlight. It's true, she said. That night, the 4 of them stood in the moonlit clearing where a foundling and a scowling king had once bound their lives together under a hunter's moon. The vow stones were still there, half swallowed by moss. Corvain's terrible carving hung again at Violet's throat, the 2 crescent moons worn smooth back to back a single circle, and when the twins grew sleepy, she gathered them down into the moss and the moonlight and sang the moon song all the way through. Every verse. The beginning and the middle, and at last the end she had spent 6 years unable to reach. Hush now. My 2 little moons, the night is long, but I am longer. Close your eyes and I will always find you, for the dark keeps nothing that is mine. The dark had kept them for a while, 6 years of it, but the moon comes back around as it always does, and the road turns home in the end, and this time, no one was waiting at the end of it alone. Thank you so much for staying with me all the way to the end of Violet and Corvana's story. I know it was a long road through the dark and the cold and 6 stolen years, and it means the world to me that you walked every step of it. If Bram and Ren finding their way back to their mama touched your heart even half as much as it touched mine, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you never miss a new werewolf romance. And before you go, I always love to know who I'm telling these stories to. Tell me in the comments where you're listening from tonight. Your town, your country, or just your little corner of the world. I read every single one, and it never stops amazing me how far this story family reaches. Until the next tale, be gentle with yourselves. Hold your loved ones close. And remember, however long the night, the dark keeps nothing that is truly yours.